Let's bring in our panel now. Matthew Continetti, editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, and Jeff Mason, White House correspondent for Reuters. Molly, your thoughts?
Well, this is a very interesting conclusion to a lengthy investigation. You had pointed out in the last hour that it was 1 year and 10 months, but of course it actually went on for close to a year before that, because the entire Russia narrative was something that was very prominent throughout the 2016 campaign. And it is worth remembering how that started. That was a political operation sort of secretly bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee, which spread the story that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. That led to FISA warrants, that led to targeting on the campaign with human informants, and it led to eventually a special counsel. And we had, for the last 3 years, frequently hysteria about treasonous collusion with Russia to steal the 2016 election. We heard Chris Wallace say in the last hour that the fact that there are no more indictments coming doesn't necessarily mean much, since the president can't be indicted. But it's also true that if that were true, that Donald Trump had colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election, you'd not see one indictment. You'd be seeing dozens, if not hundreds, of indictments of the people who were involved, who were operating with a foreign power to commit treason. And the fact that there are no more indictments coming, and the fact that all of the indictments that we've seen thus far have been for process crimes or things unrelated to what we were told by so many people in the media was treasonous collusion to steal the 2016 election, I think is very significant. We do have to wait and see exactly what the report says, and I think people on all sides want to know a lot. But if there is nothing there that matches what we heard from the media for many years, there needs to be a reckoning. And the people who spread this theory, both inside and outside the government, who were not critical and who did not behave appropriately, need to be held accountable.
Jeff, Kamala Harris, presidential candidate, Democrat, a senator from California, says Americans deserve to know the truth now that the Mueller report is complete. The report must be released immediately, and Attorney General Barr must publicly testify under oath about the investigation's findings. We need total transparency here. That's a familiar theme that we're hearing from Capitol Hill and the campaign trail.
It is a familiar theme, and I think you'll hear more of it from Democrats who are running for president and from Democrats who are in Congress and others who have been pushing for full disclosure on what has happened. I think it is important to mention, though, right now, as some have said, we're just speculating because we haven't seen the contents of that report. It is a key fact to know that the special counsel has decided he's not going to do more indictments. But and I will add, when I first heard you say that earlier in the broadcast, the first name that came to my mind as someone who's probably relieved is Jared Kushner. There's probably some relief going on in the White House, even though they haven't seen that report yet, based on that knowledge. But all of that said, we don't know what's in there. We don't know what conclusions he's drawn, and it's just too early to say what that means for the White House in particular and for others involved until we get to see the actual report.
Right. Matthew, your thoughts?
You know, Brett, this might turn out to be the greatest anticlimax in American history, because Washington has been trembling with anticipation for this report for weeks. And once it emerges, it's going to be anticlimactic in two ways. One, as Molly suggested, it may be very well the case that all of this was for nothing, that this was an investigation without a crime. And secondly, the battle will continue. So I think it's incumbent on the White House and Republicans who think that this is over. They need to understand that it's not over, that the arguments over transparency are about to begin, that the investigations that were kind of spawned off from the Mueller investigation will continue and will continue to dog the president. And moreover, now the terrain shifts to the Congress and the House of Representatives and the Democratic fishing expedition that's been going on now for several weeks.
Jeff, I want to go back to you because you're right. We cannot get to the conclusions of the report, and hopefully over the weekend and in coming days, we'll figure out what the Attorney General is going to put out publicly at Capitol Hill. But we can definitively say that Special Counsel Mueller made it to the end of the Russia investigation. For all of the speculation and all of the worry that President Trump was going to fire Mueller, and even an effort on Capitol Hill to have a bill to protect Mueller, that never came to pass.
That's absolutely right, and that's a victory for some people who were concerned that that wasn't going to happen. And there was a lot of speculation, as you just said, that the president might intervene. It's something that he was asked repeatedly. It's something that he mused about occasionally, even in an interview interview with Reuters. He talked about that. But it didn't happen. You're right. It finished. And now we just need to see what's in the report. But the fact that there is a conclusion is a start.
Molly.
I do think about all the things that haven't happened over the course of the last several years, all of the things that we were sort of promised that were going to be very major, of people being indicted, or of, there would be evidence of this treasonous collusion with Russia. And so many of the things that we were told, for instance, that Bob Mueller would be fired or that certain people would be indicted, haven't come to be true. What I don't think people have done is thought about whether some of those criticisms of this investigation warranted much more concern. You had voices in the White House complaining about what was going on. You had a few lonely voices saying this doesn't seem a very appropriate thing. It was a very disruptive process to have a special counsel sideline an incoming administration, to have these investigations undermining an administration. You had an attorney general rendered completely impotent by the claim that he was a Russian agent. You might remember that one of the many people who were fired from the FBI or let go or otherwise gone who were involved in this Russia story, Andrew McCabe, had set up an investigation of the attorney general as if he were a Russian agent. That's a ludicrous thing, and I don't think we had enough people in the media speaking truth to power in that sense, being a questioning agent of the FBI and how they were operating both before the special counsel and then with the setting up of the special counsel.
Let me ask another way. Let's say that this special counsel report, Molly, does, in essence, clear President Trump. What about the folks who went the other way and said Mueller was, a dirty cop or deep state, or will there be a turnaround in his reputation if it goes the other way, do you think?
I think there's sort of a question about what the special counsel was set up to do. Was it really set up to investigate whether Donald Trump was a Russian agent, or was it set up in sort of in a sense to protect the FBI for what it had done during the campaign and in the months leading up to the appointment of that special counsel? There was a lot of questionable behavior, whether it was running human informants, so what you might call spies against the campaign, wiretapping people close to Trump with a FISA warrant that I think is under investigation right now, whether there were other wiretaps involved as well. If he comes out with a report and it shows, as I think we have a sense of, that there was not treasonous collusion to steal the election, but also sort of says that the agency was justified in taking some of these reckless actions, I think he will have done what maybe people had hoped he would do, which is protect an agency that had behaved a bit recklessly prior to being launched. Whether that whole thing is good, though, or whether there should be more questions, and again, whether people should be held accountable. We don't want to see people taking political disputes and weaponizing them with law enforcement agencies or intelligence agencies. Just because you disagree with someone politically, whether that's a Democrat or Republican, does not mean you should use the full powers of the state to target them and destroy the lives of people who helped them. There are a lot of people who are going to prison or have been found guilty of things, that are a result of this special counsel investigation that have nothing to do with what it was sold as, process crimes, lying to the FBI. And that this whole thing happened right after you had a very different situation with the Hillary Clinton campaign, which was you saw a lot of people be let go for what they were doing. Nobody was brought up on process crimes, even though they had people on false statements, up to and including Hillary Clinton. You want to see an evenness in how our FBI and law enforcement handle different campaigns. You don't want to see them being friendly with one side and not with another. So there's a lot that remains to be done to clean up the reputation, but if Bob Mueller has somehow helped clean up the reputation by handling this part of the process well, that would be good.
Brett, I'd like to take a stab at that question too, if I may just jump in. I mean, I think the question is good when you think about there was a very concerted effort by some, including at the White House, including the President of the United States, to undermine Robert Mueller's credibility. If he does come out with a report that says there was no collusion, there will have to be a backtracking by people who did that, including at the highest levels of the White House, and that includes President Trump.
But a good example might be with the anthrax situation, where eventually the FBI came out with an anthrax report that didn't charge, or people think didn't charge the wrong person with the crime. But that went through years of problems with wrong people being accused of the crime. So it's a long story.
Yes, and complicated one.